aspirations and goals for the future. When we kicked off this process, we wanted to start with a North Star. This is a vision statement that we return to time and time again throughout this process to ask ourselves, are we continuing to be on the right path? Are we moving forward with the vision that we set out to accomplish? So I'd like to read it to you out loud. The vision statement reads, we envision a resilient, connected community where Black heritage lives on through thriving institutions, vibrant spaces, and creative purpose-built places that honor generations of local leaders who shaped this neighborhood. Next slide, please. So this document is structured in a way that can be, was meant to be graphically rich, it was meant to be user-friendly, and it was meant to be taken as opportunity or interest arose so that it could be reflective and responsive to what the community needs were at the time, of course, what the funding and financing streams were, and it was meant to be a document that could be used so residents, community members, local leadership, and decision makers could be opportunistic about implementation. The chapters that you see here are iterative, they build on each other, and the real focus of this effort is the growth framework. When we started this process, we understood that there were a number of disparate elements in each of the three communities that needed to be understood further and really considered for what the strategies could be. We decided to take a little bit of a different path, and that was a path of integration. We didn't think that you could think about transportation without thinking about economic development. You couldn't think about housing without thinking about schools and safety and jobs and workforce development. So the overarching kind of crux of this document is how each of those elements come together in a comprehensive and holistic understanding of community and strategies that really begin to address each one of those intersectionalities. This has been about 16 months now that we've been working on this plan. It has been, and everyone has worked extremely diligently. As Jonathan mentioned, the amount of public engagement and outreach that has been a part of this process was not a part of one phase. It was not one conversation. It was a thread that ran through the entirety of the planning process, and that was really intentional. We know that as time moves on, new challenges and opportunities make them avail themselves, like the May 16th tornado that was not on our bingo card for this project. And so being able to continue to build trust, to create a shared language, and to come together even in the face of tragedy is what made this plan a success. So there are 6 phases to this project. We are now in phase 6. And we're really excited about how we got here and moving forward with implementation after the plan has been adopted. Chapter 1 is the executive summary. We wanted to summarize the bulk of work that has been completed for this process and really give a high-level understanding of where we are and where we want to go in a succinct executive summary. This executive summary captures the goals and strategies of each section of the plan and can be used on its own. So the initial chapter really sets the stage for the draft plan recommendations. It gives you a sense of how to use this plan, how it can be used, and this is not a one-size-fits-all because we know that anyone who touches this plan will need to get a very quick understanding of what it means to them, how to use it, and how to accomplish the goals that are in the plan. We did highlight a few areas of the existing conditions report that we thought were foundational to the storytelling about how we got to the draft plan recommendations. And finally, we did want to recognize the tragedy that happened in this neighborhood. We thought that it was an incredibly difficult time. It still is. We have a lot more work to do. But it was an important part of how the community stayed together to move forward with creation of the recommendations. Next slide, please. We wanted to reiterate, again, the contributions of community members throughout the process on this slide. We did distribute over $10,000 in stipends. We had over a dozen community ambassadors who worked alongside us at a living wage for this process to extend outreach into the community, as Jonathan mentioned. There were over 35 neighborhood planning committee and working group meetings. Each working group took on a specific topic area of the draft plan. And every step of the way, every deliverable, every submittal that the consultant team created was vetted through each one of these committees and vetted through community members. And we'd always ask the question, did we hear you? Did we get it right? Did we use the right words? Is this what you thought it was going to be? Did we meet your expectations? Because we are the technical experts, but community members are the ones that are experts on where we are, on place-based recommendations, and on understanding how to move forward with the plan. And lastly, over 3,000 people were contacted through this process, through on-the-ground door knocking, through mailers, through online engagement, through our monthly newsletters, intercept interviews, a real interview that we ran for online for about 6 weeks, workshops, working groups, neighborhood ambassadors, and word of mouth. Each time we had an in-person session or conversation or discussion about any topic related to this plan, there was more interest, there was more involvement, there was more curiosity. And so we saw that as a sign of success, that we were moving in the right direction. The key takeaways of this phase of the plan is that co-authorship was a priority. We wanted to make sure that while we were the scribes for this plan, that community really was the author with us. We did address tornado recovery efforts. This is not a tornado recovery plan. One plan can't do everything, but we did want to acknowledge parallel, collaborative, and cooperative recovery efforts that were happening in the community during the time this plan process was happening. And really what this plan does is think about long-term resiliency and community self-sustainability. We know that this isn't gonna happen tomorrow, and if you've already had a chance to look at the plan, you understand that there's a lot of bullet points, there's a lot of things that we need to do. So making sure that we created time-bound, implementable recommendations that were in bite-sized pieces. And we did this by starting from implementation at day one, by doing pilot projects, by showing what happens to traffic patterns when you just paint an intersection in community. And it also highlights and lifts up community priorities. Documents like this can be very, very overwhelming, and we all know that expression, the plan that sits on a shelf. So to avoid some of that planning fatigue, this is not the first time that these communities have been looked at. We wanted to make sure that from the last day of this planning process, that we knew how to take one step in front of the other one. And as I mentioned, this is an integrated approach. We don't think these elements can exist on their own. They have to be integrated. We have to understand their intersectionality to make sense. One thing we learned through this process is when we create a document like this, it doesn't make sense if you can't use it. And there are a lot of words. And so throughout the entirety of this presentation, we have sprinkled in, instead of jokes, we've created scenarios to help everyone understand how this document can be used. These are questions that came up time and time again throughout the planning process that we wanted to daylight as a part of this presentation. So the first question is, what does the plan say about tornado recovery and rebuilding? We were asked this question many, many times and had a lot of discussions about it. What this plan does is it really links the recovery efforts to the plan's future, to the future of the neighborhood, to what resiliency can look like, to how we should rebuild and where we should rebuild. The plan actually gives very specific guidance on how to prioritize investment and parts of the neighborhood that can be stabilized and create a ripple effect throughout the rest of the community. So that was a really important piece of this puzzle. There are a few areas that in the plan that are referenced on this slide that go into greater detail about specific goals, specific strategies, and of course the implementation matrix, which we'll get into a little bit later in this presentation, actually gives guidance on partners who can help sort of carry the baton through some of those efforts, as well as tools for rebuilding efforts, funding tools, resources, and where we actually need to start.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hallie Nolan. I'm an urban designer with Lamar Johnson Collaborative and was fortunate enough to get to work on this plan with our team and our community here. So you've heard reference to the growth framework already. This chapter is really what I'd call the meat and potatoes of this draft plan. It is where land use, housing, and economic development come together to create this framework for long-term growth and stability in these communities. As I mentioned, the purpose is to combine those three, understanding that you can't move one forward without the other. It identifies where there are the right fit opportunities based on what we've heard from community, the existing conditions, and the opportunities that we're hoping to have here in the community in terms of new retail opportunities, new housing opportunities, and looking for what I call gentle density. So it also explains tools for implementation, some of the resources, strategies, incentives for moving those forward, and then it includes a density analysis as well as recommendations for the three neighborhoods, and then a density strategy for the whole community. So it's really used for residents, developers in the city to be aligned in terms of what project fits where, what's the right fit, where should it happen, the appropriate location, and those tools and resources for making it happen. So this is the housing vision that really was integral into this chapter. It's about creating a diverse, inclusive community with safe, high-quality homes, preserving history while fostering growth, wealth, and belonging for all residents. And then we also have goals that really led the formation of this chapter. The main priority of this chapter was the sentiment of growth from within, so really prioritizing the existing residents that have been here for generations and continue to make this such a strong place. We really wanted to prioritize them, the housing choice, opportunity, and quality, as well as retail opportunity, expanding those attainable housing options, creating new diverse housing options, repairing legacy disinvestment and redlining, and then reducing the vacancy through a block-by-block system through the creation of 8 development types. This is our economic development vision: inclusive economy driven by community-shaped investments, strategic partnerships, educational pipelines to nurture future talent, contribute to a shared prosperity, and improve key determinants of whole health and well-being. So again, the beauty of that vision is that it's not just about economic development, it's looking at everything holistically. So our goals around specifically around economic development is really strengthening those neighborhood serving retail opportunities, being able to get the tools and resources in place to attract new retail opportunities so that people can shop in their neighborhoods, they have walkable options, and they have access to their daily needs. Supporting local entrepreneurship and ownership, through the collaboration with the Dream Boulevard, leveraging arts, culture, and the strong legacy and history as economic drivers. And then another strategy associated with that is activating the corridors and also key commercial nodes throughout the neighborhood, and then supporting the cultural tourism associated with the Cultural Boulevard. Our key takeaways from this chapter: really aligning those incentives, but also if there were incentives that don't exist yet, or resources or tools or programs, what could be created to support some of these things that aren't there yet. It also looked at clustering strategic development and reinvestment instead of a parcel by parcel or one-off strategy, but really having that holistic view. Looking at the corridors and anchors that can really serve as well as stable housing, existing stable housing for growing or building that momentum for revitalization. And then, as I mentioned, the plan defines these 8 typologies for guiding redevelopment that have identified appropriate housing diversity and housing options based on that existing character, building age, lot width, existing land use and proposed land use with the new sloop, and also community input. So scenario 2, this is actually the question we got the most often. Half of my block is vacant or under-maintained. I love living here, but the empty homes make it feel unsafe and forgotten. What can be done now, and what does the plan actually change? So as I mentioned, those 8 typologies identify where existing homes, residents, and infrastructure already form a strong basis through those 8 categorizations that vacancy and density is a part of that analysis. So where are the locations where you can build momentum from that already have that concentrated focus and activity going on for housing, but also for commercial activity. And then it also outlines the opportunities for rehabilitation, new construction, and infill housing. And then there's more detail in our design guidelines in terms of what those things could look like that fit and feel appropriate to the neighborhood character. We have a few more scenarios in this chapter because it really was the depth. We want more places to buy quality groceries and daily essentials. What tools do we have? So the neighborhood highlights, as I mentioned, those nodes and corridors for commercial opportunities. There's 2 of those development types for mixed use opportunities to support housing and economic development, but really underscoring the desire from community for improved food access, healthy foods, fresh foods, whether that's co-ops, farmer markets, pop-ups, creating sort of the recommendations that allow those things to happen, and then also outlining how you can better use the tools available or new tools in order to create the opportunity for those new retail opportunities. I think this is the last one for the section. How does the plan encourage development without pushing people out? So as I mentioned, the main strategy for the growth framework is growth from within before attracting new. So the whole purpose of this is to make sure that people have choice and opportunity to stay in the neighborhood that they want to stay in, that they've been stewards of for generations. The plan really centers on that. We highlight programs like home repair, tax relief, down payment assistance, a lot of the resources that already exist or need to be further supported and highlighted so that people know those opportunities exist. And then it also shows how to pair these tools with new investment. Jonathan showed an example of the sort of housing feasibility study we did as a part of our placemaking and development scenario deliverable. So understanding what that gap is and what the needed subsidy is to fill that gap and where are the resources for filling that gap. I'm a liar, sorry. Scenario 5, how can local businesses and home-based entrepreneurs grow here? So the plan outlines, as I mentioned, in those 2 different types of commercial corridors or mixed use opportunities where opportunities for more of a local business or home-based entrepreneur fits within the community character, and then those typologies that support that type of use are outlined in the design guidelines. So a live-work unit, a mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor, a home-based business, those sort of things. We also looked at adaptive reuse for an incubator space or a smaller neighborhood-based business, that sort of thing. So really also identifying those incentives to support the feasibility of that type of thing. Transportation mobility. You have me for a couple chapters. Okay, so the purpose of this is to really focus on creating safer streets, better connectivity, and improved access. It highlights priority streets like MLK, like Van Deventer, like Natural Bridge, like St. Louis Ave. There's a few. Marcus, Euclid, Taylor, Newstead, but also Billups and Whittier as a key intersection and sort of loop from the MLK Cultural Boulevard. And then it also recommends where to add bike lanes, improved lighting, permanent bus infrastructure, what are priority intersections and sidewalks, and a phased approach for creating that safer walking network. So we identify those priority roads and opportunities in this chapter, and then the chapter can be used to help fund guiding decisions as funding is available. What are the top priority items that need to be addressed for transportation mobility? It also helps coordinate with the recently adopted transportation mobility plan, and then identify the resident priorities for improvement in connectivity. The transportation mobility vision, we envision a connected, people-first transportation system where streets are safe, beautiful, and accessible. Our public realm will reflect community pride, honor local history, and support a shared commitment to well-being. Again, a more holistic view within each chapter. So the key takeaway, I mentioned those major corridors that are high priorities. Improving those sidewalk gaps with a phased approach. So there would be 5 phases, and in the first phase, really creating a walking network so that every resident is at least a 10-minute walk from that network so that they can get to where they need to go. And then also coordinating transportation improvements with new development. So as new developments come online, making sure that the sidewalk or roadway improvements are being done aligned with that development. Scenario 6, so sidewalks, lighting, and crossings need help. How does the plan make walking safer? So as I mentioned, we have that roadway and intersection priority map that you just saw. It identifies those key walking routes for that first phase of improvement, as well as the components of the sidewalk repair include improved ADA access to those sidewalks, lighting, and really thinking about streets more holistically in terms of their design as a public realm space and what they do to contribute to community character, identity, wayfinding, branding, more of that holistic view to what a street and a roadway could be. Community assets. So the purpose of this chapter, this really covers our arts, culture, historic preservation, but also our community assets of education, community hubs, community services, job force training, that sort of thing. So the purpose of that is, the purpose of this chapter is to help identify sites or opportunities, not only for preservation, but for celebration, for strategy around wayfinding, signage, and just sharing the strong legacy of the community. Really emphasizing that arts, culture, and education component, arts and culture as an economic tool, as well as education, but also understanding that there's a strong history and legacy in the neighborhood of the education providers like Sumner. Also connecting the Cultural Boulevard with other catalytic projects that we'll list further on in this section. And then it's used to help advocate for resources, not only to protect the cultural, educational, and recreational assets, but also to support them so that they can grow and support the population we're looking to attract. This is the arts, culture, and historic preservation vision statement. So it really highlights preserving the cultural legacy of the area, identifying the cultural district, the Dream Boulevard, sustaining an arts and culture economy, and telling the story of our past, present, and future while nurturing creative talent. The goals associated with arts and culture, again, preserving and celebrating that neighborhood history and legacy, supporting artists and the cultural spaces rooted in the community. There's a number of historic landmarks and districts to be celebrated and to be lifted up. And then protecting those historic buildings while enabling adaptive reuse, understanding that those buildings are ready for a new life and a new purpose for serving the community. And then using culture, arts and culture as a driver of identity and pride. Our community assets vision, we envision a reality where our public institutions facilitate upward mobility for all. And the goals associated with this are really strengthening the existing trusted neighborhood providers and services that exist to this day. There's a strong density in the neighborhood already, where it's really about further supporting them with resources, and then improving access to services across all ages and needs, and that is another component of the transportation mobility chapter, where the walking network is related to access to schools, access to healthcare, access to jobs. And then connect residents to those existing, as I said, assets and resources. A lot of key takeaways for this chapter. So the number one key takeaway is preserving the history of Black excellence in this neighborhood. It has, as I've mentioned, a strong, rich history, and that shows up architecturally, it shows up in stories, it shows up in the education, and celebrating and strengthening those is a key component. So anchoring that identity and community pride in those locations and new locations being created, like the cultural corridor. Creating those clear pathways and access to job training, workforce training, educational opportunities. As I mentioned, strengthening those walking routes to improve that access. And then coordinating with the ongoing or future development. There's a list here of all of those, and it's not an exhaustive list. So there is a lot of activity going on here. There's a lot of stakeholders and supporters that want to see these things happen, and coordinating with all of them has been a key component of this section. So scenario 7, our youth and artists need more places to create, gather, and learn. Does the plan support that? So yes, it identifies the institutions, parks, and historic buildings that are appropriate for that type of programming, or the building opportunities for adaptive reuse or repurposing in order to support those programs. Not only new programs, but programs that already exist today. And then strengthening and supporting those partnerships with Sumner, Tandy, and other service providers in the neighborhood. Design guidelines. So the purpose of this chapter is really to set some guidelines for the look and feel of it all. So we have design guidelines for housing opportunities that really look at creating, as I mentioned, gentle density and those other housing types that maybe aren't as frequent in the neighborhood, but look to bring back that population density. We have design guidelines for commercial and mixed use opportunities, design guidelines for public space, open space, and sidewalks and roadways. So this is to make sure that the community character is preserved and new development is supportive of continuing that community character. This is the vision for design guidelines. We envision a community aesthetic that expresses and cultivates our rich heritage and values, where all are greeted with gateways that invite you into safe, quality, dynamic gathering spaces, but with purpose, and that promote a healthy and resilient future where all belong. The goals associated with our design guidelines, really setting those clear expectations so that when a developer does come into the community, they already have expectations of what community hopes to see here, what they want it to look like, where they might want it to be placed, really creating those clear expectations. Strengthening the neighborhood character, as I mentioned, rather than detracting, supporting the building rehabilitation and adaptive reuse, understanding that there is a strategy beyond just infill and new construction, and then the design guidelines for the public realm and sidewalk is really to reinforce that pedestrian comfort, creating that experience of safety and comfort and sense of place while walking. And then using the design guidelines to create predictability for residents, developers, and city staff. The key takeaways, delivering projects that fit the neighborhood's scale, materiality, things like setbacks, while adding to the character and to the density. So encouraging those diverse housing types. As I mentioned, the design guidelines include single family, ADU, duplex, fourplex, 5 to 9 small unit family, multifamily buildings, a mixed use typology, and then it goes on into open space and the commercial. But creating those that stronger pedestrian and ground floor experience by creating standards for a level 1 for a mixed use building, and really emphasizing the look and feel, materiality, ADA access, lighting, and then for streets, stormwater solutions, and safer intersections. Scenario 8. Can we get more housing options like duplexes, multi-unit, or senior-friendly units to allow for aging in place? Yes. The plan shows recommended sort of zoning adjustments through those development types outlined in the growth framework, and that also the appropriate housing typologies for those areas based on community input, the existing conditions, and community character. As well as identifying the strategies to support the building of those housing types to create that greater housing diversity, housing choice, and housing opportunity.
All right, we're almost done, folks. So this may actually be one of the most important chapters in this whole document because, let's all just take a breath from the amount of information that that is presented in here. And, you might be hyperventilating a little bit about how are we going to get this work done. Well, the implementation chapter shows you how to put one foot in front of the other, how to do the step one, how to manage expectations, how to understand that, we're not going to do all this tomorrow. We're not going to do all of it in 2026. But with a little bit of pragmatism and a big dose of hope, we've done a lot of repair in this throughout the course of this plan. And the implementation chapter really gives you the tools to hold each other accountable and responsible and to take that first step into creating the kind of neighborhood that we've illustrated today. This is really a roadmap. And the one thing about going on a road trip is that sometimes you do want to see that cool thing that wasn't originally planned. So the implementation matrix is also meant to be opportunistic. If there's a funding source, if there's an idea, if there's a vision, if there's a path that gets you to doing one of the things in this document that we didn't originally anticipate, we should do that. And this document gives you the flexibility to do that. This is also a living document. What you see today, we hope that it is not the same in a year. We want you to keep coming back to this and updating it and adjusting it based on the real life conditions on the ground, the real life conditions in your budget, and the real life conditions that are based on opportunity that we see in front of us. It should change as years go by, and we hope that every single year you return to this document to make sure that it continues to align with your vision and aspirations, that it continues to align with the way that you want our community to look, and that it continues to align with the direction that you want the city of St. Louis to move in. The implementation vision is a coordinated, community-led implementation model that turns vision into action through clear priorities, neighborhood accountability, strong partnerships, and early wins that build momentum. The goals are to get everything done, to put it very, very simply. But we did in this implementation matrix wanted to be very, very specific about having an understanding of the magnitude of cost of each one of the strategies in this document. We wanted to identify who the leaders and champions of the plan were going to be, who is taking the community's hand and saying, come with me, who are the partners that we have currently in community, currently in decision-making and leadership in all of our networks, and where the gaps are. Where are the areas where we need to fill in some of the missing teeth in our social networks and in our organizational system strategy to make sure that we do have the tools and participation necessary to continue to activate this plan. And lastly, we encourage you to track progress through clear metrics. And there's a number of different ways that we can do that. The next phase of this project will be creating an implementation committee, but we give you some framework and organizational guidelines to create that dashboard. The key takeaways from this chapter include time-bound goals, strategies, and actions that are identified throughout each one of the chapters of this document. They are combined in this chapter, and they are clearly differentiated by topic area, so that if you want to do strategy 1 from transportation, you understand who you need to call, how long it's going to take, you have an idea of around how much it's going to cost, low, medium, high, and you also understand how to get there. There's an action plan. So we know that partnerships and collaboration are critical to the success of this plan. And we hope that, this plan is one of those documents that can be a framework, can be replicable, and that can continue to guide the community to success. Scenario 9 question is, how do we use the plan after today? Well, there's lots of ways to use it. First, we have to adopt it, then we get to use it. But the projects have been prioritized. So working with the neighborhood planning community, neighborhood planning committee, working with ambassadors, working with local organizations to continue to lift up what those priorities are and advocate for how to get those projects implemented is one thing that is completely realistic and a great way to use the plan. Tracking progress, holding people accountable, and really understanding that the goal of this plan is to change what we're seeing today into what we want to see tomorrow. So continuing to move that forward. This plan gives you teeth, it gives you tools, and it gives you options and opportunities to be able to do that. And there's a variety of ways where those are described in more detail in the plan. So what happens next? We kind of gave you a little bit of spoiler around what some of those priority actions were, and they're on this slide. We know that through the course of this planning process that we tried a couple pilot projects. They were placemaking, they were temporary, but they helped illustrate what happens when you see the translation between seeing words on paper and seeing a change in your physical environment. So that's the first bullet. It's beginning to identify the early wins, the low-hanging fruit, and the pilots that continue to build on the momentum that have been created through this planning process. As Hallie mentioned, through the growth strategy, this plan gives specific direction on a block-by-block approach to revitalization and resiliency in the community. So continuing to support that ideology, those strategies, with the actions in the implementation plan can also continue to build momentum. And lastly, continuing to build on the repair that has been done through this process, the trust that has been built, the capacity of neighborhood residents and community organizations that have been a part of this process. This was a lot of time and energy. There was a lot of education, there was a lot of collaboration. And so the next steps and priorities for this are moving that momentum into action. We mentioned Dream Boulevard. There will be a submission for Chapter 99, which is it's the process of approval that governs that process is coming up. And then the creation of an implementation task force. This is not the end of the process. I always say implementation is actually the beginning, because this is where the real hard work actually starts. We have a number of community residents who have a few words to say about their experience in the plan. So first off, are we okay to go with it? Okay. First off, I'd like to ask Julia to get us started. Thank you, Miss Julia.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I wrote a speech. Aaron always said my speeches are too long, but I think this speech is just right, so that everybody can get a feel for my community. Good evening. My name is Julia Allen. I've lived in this community for 76 years. Growing up here is something that I can truly say I am very proud of. Who can say they grew up in a community where some of the most life-changing legal battles that changed the lives of Black people in the United States related to segregation and job discrimination originated? Our community can. How many of you have heard of Green versus McDonald? Shelley versus Kramer, the Dred Scott decision. Gaines versus Canada, Brown versus the Board of Education, Turner versus Clayton, and Liddell versus the Board of Education. Well, these are some of the lawsuits that came out of my community for the greater good of all of us in St. Louis and the nation. They had national impact. Imagine living down the street and talking to Julia Davis and her son, John D. Buckner, almost every day. Both were educators and community members who believed in the preservation of Black history and culture. Mrs. Davis was so outstanding. We have a library named after her, and her history collection is preserved in the main library. Well, these are just some of the contributions that people who live or have lived in my community have made for the greater good of all. Growing up, our community was very diverse and thriving. We had people on all levels of the economic spectrum. They worked together for a community. Neighbors knew and looked out for one another. We had schools where excellence was taught and expected, churches and community organizations that worked for all of the community, housing, community action agencies. Today, we still have those same organizations and churches like Northside Community Housing, Coatbury Presbyterian Church, which unfortunately was torn down because of the tornado. Annie Malone Family and Children's Services, Antioch Baptist Church, Northside Youth and Senior Services, St. Philip's Lutheran Church, Homer G. Phillips Hospital, St. Matthew's Catholic Church, St. Louis Cares, St. James AME Church, and the Tandy Rec Center. These serve our spiritual, social, healthcare, and recreational needs. In 1979, after the closing of Homer G. Phillips Hospital, our community started to change. Schools began to close, businesses began to leave, homes and property began to be abandoned. Our community alone has over 4,000 vacant or abandoned properties. This does not include damage done by the May 16th tornado. We're talking about almost 30 years of neglect, disinvestment, abandonment, decreased city services, and bad policy. Whether the Team 4 plan was officially adopted by the city or not, the city of St. Louis has continually abandoned the people of North St. Louis using the guidelines from Team 4. How many of you on this commission have ever really visited our community except for a meeting like this? How many of you outside of your civic, private, or social life have gotten to really know the people in our community, our values, our hopes, our dreams? Guess what? In spite of all the disinvestment, we have survived. We stand united, strong, and will continue to survive because we understand what community is all about. Now we come to you today. We have this community plan, which our community, the City Planning Office, CDC, and Black Rock Consulting have worked on over the last 16 months. It's a good plan. It's a fair and equitable plan that we as a community have come to a consensus on. I am encouraging you to adopt this plan. Do not make the mistakes of the last 47 years and leave this plan on a shelf or continue on the path of disinvestment. The plan needs to be approved, financed, and implemented. It needs to begin next year with the help of community because we are still standing, watching, working as a community, and we will hold you accountable.
Thank you, Ms. Julia. Our next speaker is Frankie.
Hello, people of St. Louis, the city of my people. Good evening. I am Frankie Williams, a resident of the Ville and an artist. I have been involved with neighborhood planning for 2 years and an ambassador for almost 2 years. Neighborhood planning is important because it is crucial for addressing historic disinvestment, ensuring equitability, development and empowering residents to shape their future, focusing on goals like affordable housing, economic growth, improvement safety, and better community assets, making plans like Plan STL vital for turning community versions into reality, fostering stronger, more vibrant neighborhoods. I wanted to be part of this project because, since my senior year of high school, I like to be involved in things, such as this. It has been a passion for me. What I want to see moving forward in this community is a lot of changes, such as more safety, more new businesses, new art, new everything. And I want to build a community where we live in a place with peace, love, and respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. Our next speaker is Charles Eden. You guys are acting surprised. The list is like right here.
Good evening, good evening. I don't have a speech, but I do have some bullet points. And I guess the best thing to do is just tell my story. I like to start with thank you for taking the time to listen and, thank you. Let's start with, I'm just gonna go off my bullet points. And all right, preserve Black history and like the cultural aspect of it, of the plan. This is important to me because as a growing up in this neighborhood, I really wasn't the best. I was always in trouble, DJO. Then when I got to Sumner, I've been to 10 different schools, by the way, before I graduated, so yeah. When I got to Sumner, I just kind of, just walking in and seeing the Wall of Fame and knowing the history. It's important that we know our history because I didn't know my history, who I was and where I come from. So preserving that history, it just got my head on straight. It got me wanting to be a delivery driver to believing that I can be the president if I wanted to. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. It offered me opportunities coming out of Sumner. I actually had a job opportunity to travel city to city. I lived in a lot of cities. I worked on the Fight for 15 campaign, so it offered me the opportunity to see how different communities operate, organizing the community, organizing labor, organizing, just the whole aspect of it is very interesting. And seeing the country, it kind of made me, it got me to a point where it's like, dang, man, St. Louis has nothing like this. So I kind of just packed up and came back home. I found one of the old LRA houses. It was abandoned for, I think, like 16 years, 17 years. And I've just been working toward perfection since then. And then, like, my block is like, it's a good block, but it's not a good block. Just like the north, just this all over the north side. Just this investment, this plan will really bring business and development into the community, stuff that we need. The walkability, being able to, walk. When I lived in New Orleans, the pathways and the landscape, the parks, all the neutral grounds, U-Turn City. It's just people was all in the middle, on the neutral grounds, like Kings Highway, playing chess. I experienced real Southern hospitality, but here I can't even walk down the block without, it's city, this LRA own a lot of houses, so they all overgrown, sidewalks broke up. Just seeing how cities plant the correct trees to make a difference, just being able to get to your house, it's annoying, to be honest. Go back into my phone. So yeah, I'm gonna end it right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Unfortunately, Dr. Rhonda Wallace couldn't be with us today, but we have a recorded message from her that we'll watch now.
I want to first apologize, y'all. I was just faced with a family emergency, so I'm getting ready to leave. But I wanted to vocalize, communicate, shout, or whatever it is, what I prepared to say to you this evening, because I'm very in support of and passionate about a stronger North Side. I truly believe that we can build a resilient and connected community where Black heritage lives on through thriving institutions, vibrant spaces, and creative purpose-built places that honor generations of local leaders who shape the neighborhood, but also help us be reflective on those generations and those local leaders so that we can fully support them and thrive as our students and community members are learning the history of the North Side. What I said was embedded into the community vision, and I vocalized it and said it to you because I truly believe that this can happen. Sumner High School is one of the gems of the Ville community. We have made great strides in ensuring that our community and our students are well versed in vocalizing not only their wants but their needs as well. I support scenario 1 fully because this plan links the immediate needs with long-term strategic rebuilding plans. Now, what I said is very important. It links the immediate needs with long-term strategic rebuilding plans, which is needed for the North Side community. It needs to link up for it to make sense, y'all. I support the vision of having a safe community with high-quality homes that preserves the history of the Ville community. Now, we want to preserve, but we do understand that we have to sometimes not preserve. But we do have beautiful homes in this community where we can preserve those homes and continue to teach our community and our students the history of the Ville and the North Side. We need an economic development plan or vision that is driven by community-shaped investments that are embedded, y'all, in sustainable partnerships. Now, this is a part of the vision for the development, but we need to embed those partnerships into that so that we can have those sustainable partnerships and also create a family-based partnership with our community members and community partners that will really focus on how we drive our community decisions and how we shape those investments. Our community is in need of establishments that will provide quality groceries and daily essentials, and y'all already know this. I believe in this wholeheartedly, including fresh food vendors and co-ops, gardens, and anything that our students can walk past and have the opportunity to have fresh food. But not only our students, but our seniors, our community members, and everyone that will have the opportunity to have fresh food vendors, and just the opportunity to pick their own foods, grow their own foods, walk into establishments where food is freshly prepared, and ready for them to take home to prepare for their families. I support the strategic and intentional plan to grow and develop local businesses and home-based entrepreneurs. That's my jam, y'all, because this is great modeling for students and community members. We need to model how that looks. How do you grow and develop a business? How do you sustain a business? And how you do that if you want to have a home-based business or be a home-based entrepreneur, y'all. This is great modeling for our babies, so I'm in full support of that too. My support runs
Okay, we'll continue on with Miss Sunny Hutton.
Good evening, y'all. Sunny Hutton, resident of Kingsway East and also community engagement consultant on the project. I am actually reading on behalf, I don't know if y'all got the intro. That was Dr. Rhonda Wallace, the principal of Sumner, all right. And I am reading on behalf of Douglas Thaman, the CEO, Executive Director of Northside Community School off of Euclid. He enters by saying my name is Douglas, but that's not my name. But you get where I'm going here. So they are a pre-K public charter school that has served families in North St. Louis for more than 15 years. He says, while I do not personally live in North City, our students and families do. They live in the Ville, Greaterville, and Kingsway East and surrounding neighborhoods, and for them, this neighborhood plan directly affects their daily life, how safely children travel to and from school, whether families feel connected and supported, and whether the community is a place where people can stay and thrive. My involvement in this planning process has focused on communication, access, and participation. Northside Community School has helped share information about neighborhood planning meetings, working groups, and opportunities for feedback. We've hosted meetings and used our school as a trusted space to make sure families understand what is being discussed and how their voices can be heard. Our school also serves as a neighborhood gathering place. We regularly host community events, including National Night Out. That was fun, y'all. That was a good time. Which brings together families, neighbors, and community partners in a positive and visible way. These events build relationships, increase trust, and reinforce the idea that this neighborhood matters and is worth investing in. This neighborhood plan is especially important because it is already producing tangible results. The Build Day pop-up events near Sumner School and St. Louis Avenue in Euclid showed how resident vision can turn into real immediate change. Safer crossings, calmer traffic, and activated public spaces. Families notice the difference right away, particularly parents navigating these streets with their children. At Northside Community School, we see every day how neighborhood conditions affect students, their attendance, stress, safety, and overall well-being. This plan aligns with what our families consistently tell us they want: safe streets, accessible resources, respect for community history, and investment that strengthens rather than displaces residents. The critical next steps is follow-through. North St. Louis has experienced plans in the past that did not fully materialize. The trust built through the process depends on implementation. So the early momentum we've seen must continue. Moving forward, I am committed to continuing to share information with families, to keep our school open as a space for community connection, and to support ongoing engagement so this plan remains grounded in the voices of those who live here. I urge the Planning Commission to support this neighborhood plan, not just in approval, but in action, for the families and children who call North City home. Thank you for your time and your leadership.
Thank you, Sunny. Next we have Michael Burns.
Good evening to the commissioners, Alderwoman Sanye, to the city officials, city employees, concerned citizens, and the pastor there. Good evening to you again. My name is Michael Burns. I am president of Northside Community Housing, and my remarks are going to be brief, not because I'm concise and an expert speaker, but because y'all had this at my dinner time. And I'm hungry. You didn't have no food here, so I'm going to get right into the business here. So I was a part of the neighborhood planning committee, especially the housing program group. On that particular group, we dealt with everything from sidewalks to lots, lot development, rehabilitation of properties, buildings, and residential, as well as infill and new construction. This plan also included not just what the work of Northside Community Housing, but it included the work of CARE-STL, Northside Youth and Senior Services, Flor de Lee Development, who's developing the whole 4200 block of Maffin and Simmons School. So all of those projects are a part of this. The plan is good, it's concise. members of the community, both the residents, the business community, the city officials, the developers have all worked to make sure that this program works out because we see this as a positive move in North St. Louis, and we want to certainly be behind it. And because of that reason, Northside Community Housing is specifically in favor of this plan. But it's also a little personal to me as well, because half of my life I lived in North St. Louis, the first half of my life. And during those 30 years or so, 10 of those years I lived on the 4,000 block of St. Louis Avenue. On that block, I met a black Catholic family that lived across the street from me called the Myers family. And it just so happens that one of those Myers kids is Jonathan Roper's mother. So I grew up with Jonathan Roper's mother, his aunts, his uncles, his grandfather, and his grandmother. You know, so to see him especially be the person to work and put together this plan is extremely heartwarming to me. And I'm so grateful to be here, to be alive, and to watch this plan go forward, and knowing that it's been under this young man's leadership. And I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. And last and certainly not least, we have Mr. Tyrone Johnson.
Thank you. I wrote a speech as well. Good evening. We hear a lot of beautiful words in rooms like this. We hear about potential, strategy, tomorrow, but I'm not here to talk about tomorrow in the abstract. My name is Tyrone Johnson, and I'm here because I believe in implementation. I believe that the difference between a dream and a delusion is discipline to write it down, map it out, and actually get it done. My roots in the soil run deep. My mother is a graduate of Sumner High School. I lived in the Ville when I was very young. So when I look at Area 1, I don't just see a map. I see history. I see my history. That history is exactly why I aligned myself with Kingsville, where I now serve as the community liaison for the Kingsway East neighborhood. I didn't go to Kingsville to find a philosophy. I went there because I saw my own values reflected in their work. I saw a group that wasn't just talking about change, but was building systems to sustain them. I joined them because I wanted to be around people who treat execution as a requirement, not a suggestion. That is exactly the same energy I'm bringing to this economic development plan. And what excites me most right now is seeing the energy shared, and I'm proud to see our area working together. Kingsway East, the Ville, the Greater Ville, moving as one unit. Let's be honest. Economic development can sound cold. It can sound like charts and profit margins. But if we do this thing right, the plan is actually an act of love. We have to focus on wrapping our arms around the people who are here right now, though. We aren't trying to build a new neighborhood only for new people. We're building infrastructure for us. Implementation means creating a physical environment that tells our residents, you matter, you are safe, you belong. That is what these amenities are really about. I brought up safety kiosks and flock cameras. This isn't just technology, it's a peace of mind. It ensures that a mother or a neighbor can walk to the store and feel secure in their own zip code. We want coffee and tea houses. We need a place to sit down, look eye to eye with each other. We need a space to simply breathe. Health and wellness centers, because we cannot build a strong economy on the back of sick people. We need healing within walking distance. This is a vision, but a vision without a system is just a wish. We all know the danger here. We know that excitement is easy, but endurance is hard. We know that 3 months from now, When the paperwork piles up and the bureaucracy gets heavy, projects tend to fade. I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen. My commitment is to follow through. I understand organization. I understand the creative process. And I understand that we have to protect this plan from getting watered down or forgotten. This neighborhood deserves more than a good start. It deserves a strong finish. It deserves a team that implements what is promised. Let's wrap our arm around this community. Let's respect the work. Let's get it done. I want to thank each and every person here for their time and energy. It has not gone unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for your hard work and support of the plan, and that concludes public testimony.
Thank you, Leslie and Hallie, and thank you, everyone, for being a part of the planning process. As you heard, these 7 people. Oh, we're not in public hearing yet, so I'm sorry. This was part of the presentation. So these members have been a part either as a working group member, neighborhood ambassador, neighborhood planning committee members, and they played really crucial roles in this planning process. Just note, at this point where you heard the presentation, staff feels as though we met the minimum requirements for plan adoption, and we're here to answer any questions or comments that you may have, and look forward to the public hearing. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll use this. So we will be opening the official public hearing. If you haven't spoken yet, you have an opportunity. I have one person who is registered, but if anybody else would like to speak, the Reverend, and you would too, thank you. We'll go ahead and pass this out so you can write down your name. You'll have about 3 minutes to speak, and we will officially open the public hearing now. Oh, and if you're online and would like to speak, go ahead and put your name in the chat. As I said, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. When you start speaking, we would ask that you go ahead and say your name and your connection to the neighborhood.
Move to open the public hearing.
All right. The motion was made by Commissioner Batten, second by Commissioner Fowler. Call the roll. Aye. All right, the public hearing is officially open. The first to speak that we have listed here is Althea Haywood. I ask you to come and I'll give you the mic.
Hello, I know I only have 3 minutes, but I can do this. First of all, I'm part of Kingsway East. And what has surprised me, but what I heard, I cannot shoot this in the foot or anything. It sounds like a good plan. But the people that are in my neighborhood, that's around me, and we're talking about at least 4 or 5 blocks, we knew nothing about the planning whatsoever. We felt left out. And then, so there is another neighborhood meeting that's happening at the exact same time. But I'm going to tell you, going forward, and you're talking about building community, you're going to have to make sure that you communicate with everyone in those neighborhoods. You have block units that you could have got notices out to people, so that way the block captains would have talked to people. But like I said, you have a section of people that feel left out. I'm a 60s baby. My parents were the second black family to move on my block. We live next door to the Mitchells. So therefore, I don't want to say I'm militant, but I guess to a certain degree I am. I'm a Sumnerite. My teachers were militant. They taught us to stand up for our rights. So I'm watching what you guys are going to do. I'm no longer sick. I'm much better now. But I'm going to keep an eye on you. But I'm going to tell you, you need to make sure that you talk to everyone, not just a few. Just don't set the committee and then don't say that we said something or bought into it. Because I know I have 45 houses on my block that I'm block captain. and none of us knew anything about this. So just remember that.
I think we'll keep using this just for the benefit of everybody here in the room. The next person I have on the list is Jean Crumpton.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jean Crumpton, and I am with the Cope Brigand Presbyterian Housing Corporation. And we are currently in the process of rehabbing the building at the 4700 Labadie as a mixed-use building, which we were able to get some CDA grant funding for. So I wanted to speak out. It took us years to get this building, which was an LRA building that had been vacant for many years, set up for some low to moderate income housing, and also to have some office space for rental space. But I want to say that one of the points made here was to keep the momentum going. That project was the first project for, this project is the first project for years. And we don't want to, we wanted that to be like a catalyst for more development, more improvement in North St. Louis City, especially in, we're part of the Kingsville group also. So I am very excited about this. I'm happy that the organizations are all working together to get it done. And I hope that the city will continue to support the growth and the momentum that has been put into this program.
I'm going to send you back to the Reverend
Hello, and welcome to St. Philip's. I'm Reverend Richard Ashley. I'm the pastor of St. Philip's. And I think this is a well-written visionary plan. It's kind of vague, and that bothers me. I grew up on Cook Avenue, 4108, so I'm definitely a part of the greater Ville and Ville community. Sumner Wright, Riddick Elementary. I'm sure you contacted local churches in doing this, but St. Philip's wasn't contacted. I found out about this when we were approached about the meeting, and I'm pleased to host it and hope that there's still flexibility so that those of us who were not part of this can have some input. Because we've been here 98 years, that ought to say, give us a call. And I'm worried about funding. And let me just say this. I'm old enough to remember when we were promised that Homer Phillips would not close. Broken promise. I don't want this plan to end up on the shelf and broken. So I'm supportive, but I want to see some action and some funding in this community. And, you can call St. Philip's. We'll be there.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone online that's wanting to speak? Sorry, I don't know who's in charge of the computer. And if you would just go ahead and sign your name so we have it on the record. Miriam? No one online, thank you.
I would just first like to say this is my first time attending one of these meetings, and I'm here with someone else, and I'm really glad that we came because we're trying to do God's work and community work in the greater Ville and bring some things into existence. in the back end. So we did apply for some projects. But I first off would like to just start by saying, first, my name is Lynn Anderson. My parents were living in these areas as I was a child. So I was born on 5065 Claxton. That's not the Greater Field, that is Walnut Park. However, this neighborhood is tied to my grandmother, and she spent 30 years on college over near the fairgrounds area, and that's where I spent most of my time as a child. So my heart is in North St. Louis. It always has been. Right now, I reside in St. Louis County, but I do have a small business that is here in North St. Louis. That business is Career Services, and it is called Diversity Job Source. What we've done is 52 job fairs in the St. Louis area. We're trying to bring those job fairs to St. Louis City. They've been existing in St. Louis County. My heart is in North St. Louis simply because there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. This plan is excellent, but just as the pastor stated, we do need to be more specific on some things, even though we haven't read the whole packet, because I have the packet downloaded on my phone and it's very long. I didn't hear anyone mention reentry services. I didn't hear anyone mention anything, maybe one person about mental health. I heard someone mention something about health services. I know that Aphenia has recently came to the area, and they do provide a plethora of health services. However, in this plan, because this covers a wide area, and these are areas that are critical, and they need help. So the mental health services, the reentry services, the career services, these things have to exist. And in the plan, there needs to be a plan about how you're going to create these things if they aren't there. I know that Urban League, and I know that they have the Empowerment Center, and these things are new, and that Boys and Girls Club is doing something new here on Grand. So I've pretty much been doing my homework because I was trying to see where my business is going to fit in on Grand. Because again, it all starts on the main streets which connect the dots. So you got Grand, you have Martin Luther King, you have Natural Bridge, you have Kings Highway. So, you know, these have always been the whole corridor of the route of getting things to be implemented that are going to be successful. There's definitely some things that have started that has been successful, and I really applaud St. Louis City for getting these things done. But I would say we've only 25% in. It's 75% still left there because our city is still has a lot of violence. We have a drug problem. So like in this plan, even though I know that these things are technically regarding housing and supportive services and things like that, we do need to put the key items in the front that are going to grab the attention because we have some major issues here. So to have sustainability, we're going to need some other things like some transitional living. Some people don't like to deal with shelters, but the reality is we have a homeless problem here as well. So the shelters are very, very necessary. Okay, community centers are missing. You only have a couple that comes to mind when you're dealing with this area, and so we need to have several come to mind when you're dealing with this area. So building of community centers are missing. Building of malls, and a lot of people think that's far-fetched. No mall is going to come to this. Well, I beg to differ, because when the planning is done, there is a conglomerate of stores that would come to this area, but we do have to focus on safety. So, you know, it is some other things that need to get tied in to the plan and be more specific, and some other people that do need to be invited to these meetings because their communication and what they're going to convey and attribute to this plan is critical. Like St. Louis Police Department needs to be a part of this plan. I don't know any other ones, but I know that that's definitely missing because we're dealing with safety. But anyway, I just wanted to say hello, and I am very glad that I got a chance to attend, and I look forward to the opportunity of continuing to attend these things so that I can be a part of the plan and part of the solution, just as I've been in the past with my career services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Pastor Reggie Chandler. I kind of grew up in this neighborhood. My family lived on St. Ferdinand, and I grew up in the Drummer Bugle Corps, the Lancers, and Tandy Park. So I'm and I was born at home of G. Phillips. And so May 16th changed our church's life when our church was destroyed by the tornado. And I thank Pastor Ashley for allowing us to worship downstairs. We had an opportunity to leave and go somewhere else, but I love this community. I decided that I wanted to stay and worship here and be able to make a change in the community. My thing is, let's stop having a lot of meetings and no action. Let's do that. I'm kind of in the 60s. I was born, and I travel all over the country. And so there's always a lot of meetings. There was a job I was at. We had meetings on when we're going to have the next meeting, but there was no action. So I'm asking each and every one of you, I don't know you all personally, but you're going to hear a lot from me. I do a lot in the community. Along with St. Philip's, we just purchased over 80 sleeping bags, cold weather sleeping bags, and over 75 portable portable chargers for the unhoused. So we're really tackling this thing in the community. All I'm saying is, please, let's not just have meetings, let's have actions. And you all have been elected, so we know what's going on in Washington and things like that, but I feel that St. Louis is better than that. And again, would like to meet each and every one of you all. And so if anything I can do, me and Pastor Ashley, we do it together. And so he needed a firecracker like me here, and so I'm here, and I'm ready to get some stuff done for this community. Amen? Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, so that's the last of the public meeting. Need a motion to close the public meeting? Second? All right. Moved by-
Previous roll? Sorry, I interrupted.
Any objections to previous roll? And that motion was by Alderwoman Sanye, and the second was by Commissioner Huff. Any objections to previous roll? Nope. All right, hearing none. The public hearing is closed. All right, we'll now move on to Commissioner questions and discussion. I'm going to go ahead and pass this all the way down.
All right.
Excuse me.
I just wanted to say thank you. As a person who has committed themselves deeply to this community, I stood by with high expectations, and I truly feel that you all exceeded my high expectations in the way that you've delivered this plan. So, very excited to see it completed, and I am ready for implementation.
I would just echo the gratitude. I'm really happy to see you all here. I know you could be doing anything right now at 7:30 on a Wednesday night. And really, as an alderwoman, I really want to emphasize to you all that it's really important that you all talk to your alderperson, your locally elected official. Someone called this commission elected officials. This commission is not elected officials. I am an elected official as an alderwoman, and then there's a representative from the president's office, and there's one other alder here, but there are only 3 folks, and then everyone else is kind of staff or appointed in different ways. And so I want to provide that clarity, but I just want to make sure as far as implementation, when there's a developer that wants to do something, when there's a business owner that wants to do something, when there's someone who needs a zoning variance, your alderperson is going to be the key person that kind of facilitates those conversations and who is elected to represent your interests and have those conversations on your behalf. I'm lucky enough and honored enough to have some neighborhoods where we have neighborhood plans, and a lot of times I'm able to reference those plans when I'm telling someone, no, I don't want your payday shop, or I don't want your auto loan shop, or I don't want your whatever, insert entity that doesn't align with the community plan. So I just, in addition to just thanking you all for your diligence and participating, I just wanted to echo that I think it's really important that you make sure that your local official is tied into this process as much as possible, and that you guys are just being vocal and in communication with that individual about what it looks like to carry this forward, because that will be the person that coordinates with city departments and interested parties who want to come into your community and do this work. So I really wanted to highlight that and put that on record, and then just really wanted to thank also the consultants and the city staff and the departments for all of your over 1,000 doors knocked, over 4,000 pieces of mail sent. I know that everyone did not get reached, but I do see a good intention to do it. And I would just say, I think as we move forward as a commission, we should definitely talk about some of the things that we missed here, whether it's how can we improve our communication with institutions within communities such as churches, how can we incorporate the block captains and block units. I think these are just things for us to take note of as we continue these plans and make sure that more of our neighborhoods have them to cover these communication gaps, and I'm happy to stand in the fold and help with that in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of great testimony here tonight, and I want to echo my thanks for everyone that has come out tonight. Thank you to the planning team. Thank you to the city staff. An effort of this magnitude takes a lot of time, and it's certainly a big group lift. So this is a great way to end the year, I think, in terms of bringing community together. And it's an incredibly important area and neighborhood for the city of St. Louis. It is rich in history. My family has history here. My grandfather came to St. Louis from Washington, D.C., my grandmother from the Philippines. They met while working as physicians at Homer G. Phillips. So quite literally, I don't think I would be on this planet without some of the legacy of the institutions in this neighborhood. So it's poetic that we're here tonight. I think that's great. As an architect, I love seeing a plan with implementation. I love seeing design standards. That's incredibly important. I think that'll really help the neighborhood as development comes and the neighborhood rebuilds. There's a lot of work to do. I get the urgency of implementation, and I think that's an incredibly important part of plans that are adopted from the city these days, and is something that this commission is certainly keenly interested in. We've recently adopted the strategic land use plan in the city, the transportation mobility plan, the sustainability plan, and all of that is going to be key as we work with these neighborhood plans and implement all of that together to really achieve the excellence that these neighborhoods deserve. One sort of general question, and this is for sort of city staff. So in regards to implementation, a lot of that has to do with, one, coordination among city departments on how we, and quasi-city departments like SLDC, CDA, on implementing these plans. And to do that often requires funding. So, being my neighborhood is the West End in the city, we've been lucky to get some CDA grants as well to jumpstart some of the projects that were identified in our neighborhood plan that was adopted a few years ago, which has been excellent to see. But some of these things will not happen without funding identified, and part of that is as working with your elected officials. Part of that is, I think, finding ways to be creative, grant funding. But I'm curious, as we go through this planning process for many of these neighborhoods, that it's going to be a challenge to get private funding, developer interest to do this, to do some of this work. And as a city, we've shown an appetite for, transit funding, for repairing LRA buildings. I think there is an appetite in the city from its residents to do some of this work and self-fund some of this work through our own tax dollars. And is there, ward capital funding, CDA funding is always something that can fluctuate, but is there an opportunity where a fund could be created to specifically implement planning initiatives? Something I think worth considering. And I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts on, as these plans complete over the next few years, on how the planning agency is going to move from this planning phase to the implementation phase.
Thank you very much about the question about implementation and funding. So we break down the different aspects. So there's not one funding, one aspect. If you're in the housing realm, or if you're in the transportation realm, federal grants, state grants might say you could spend it on this. We have to look at the ones that we have today, and we could maybe just change a little bit, or maybe collaborate more, or just say, hey, you have this Prop S funding, which is a new source of funding for LRA particular properties that did not exist before. It's not enough, but it's a start. But who's that second half who's going to come in and say, okay, I see your 50,000 and I'm going to layer 50,000 on that? And who's the champion in the city who's going to talk about that and also do that? So, in looking at this particular plan, the development scenarios for one did look at, let's say, a house. It's not just you need weatherization repair money. You might need money to hold a property for a year when you get your other finances in order, when you get your loans in order, when you get your LIHTC in order, when you get your Missouri MHDC funding in order. So there's a number of stages of development that in this plan actually we did break down to look at and to say this particular person who's maybe the city, who might not be the city. And a lot of times it can't always be the city because we are limited, but the city does pop on a lot of those items because we're saying just don't use Prop S, use CDA funds for this, use Prop S for that, SLDC come in for this, and bring it all together. So we need to be better at that, which traditionally, well, we haven't been as good for that in a lot of neighborhoods. Other items, I know SLDC did hire a new grant writer, which is new for the city, and a lot of neighborhoods definitely need it, and they were trying to do it on their own as volunteers even. So we want to identify those different opportunities for one, but also to say, and then you can guide that energy here. So yes, we hired a grant writer, great, but what are they going to do? And what are they going to focus on? So there's communicating those items and looking at, there's the capital improvements budget, that's an annual allocation. There's the 5-year consolidated housing plan as well. So we also need to meet with, all their people are always busy. They're always, the wards just got a lot bigger in the last couple of years. So they're meeting with more people and understanding. So we hope that these community plans can be used as to say, hey, these are, let's just say the top 5 things or 10 things under your purview that might be law about zoning policy. They're already working on pro-housing. So that that initiative, the city did receive funds. We are looking at shorter development process, which does help a lot of this get started. Also in this planning process, we held what's called a building confidence and housing program. So most of our neighborhoods are built about, it's mostly housing, then you have community assets and parks, but if you look at a land use map, it's a lot of housing. So starting there, we also brought in bankers, insurance agents, and different nonprofits who actually build in communities. So Mr. Burns was one of participants there, but we also had others to say, okay, what does it take to make the city be more attractive, or what can they bring to the table? And a lot of it was, I'll just say, myself, Scott, Don, Miriam, we're planners. So we do need the other people, the other programs. I'm glad SLDC hired a grant writer because PDA, should we have it? Should CDA have it? We need to agree and get coordinated more to say we don't all need a grant writer. We do need one, but we need to be focused. So let's focus. Let's make the programs work for us. Let's understand that, we have a 1950s zoning code, but it took a lot of thinking, a lot of people to support, hey, that's older than a lot of people in this room, and so it's just like, what doesn't work, what does, understanding that more, and let's change policies, let's align the funding sources, and also the confidence that people have. Once you say, hey, St. Louis actually has it together, they have this plan that they could look at, I want to be a part of that. That's exciting. Tina Turner mural before Harlem Tap Room went down, that example of Whittier and MLK, please look at it. There's Tina Turner mural. Invest STL is moving in, or they moved in. The Dream Boulevard's across the street, and there's also, that's at one of the newest strip malls in the area there, and they have a restaurant too. They had multiple restaurants. We could celebrate there tonight after this adoption at Harlem Tap Room if they were still open. Of course, the tornado happened, but we still look at to say that's a very important place. And we all have our roles, but we also need to know what these roles are. Yes, and so what pays for this program, the Economic Development Sales Tax of 2017, part of that was the planning, but also the implementation. So there is seed money available. The last 2 years of that funding, there has been matches that were made. So, and PDA being one of the reviewers of these the grant awards, a lot of them came with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of different matches to say, hey, actually, yeah, we went for 200, 300,000 for this. However, the alderperson's budget they put in capital award money, there's some private entities as well. So that 200,000 actually turned into $1 million seed. So we just put the 10%, 20% in. You got it, 300% out. So doing stuff like that, and to say, hey, we have these plans that we're advancing, and a lot of community to do it too. We need more programs like that. We need to show more success more quickly, so that other people can say, right now, I do agree. I heard this in the planning process. We need to see some action. Partially, that's what the development scenarios were there for. We did a little bit of action, but we need a lot of action. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Many members of my staff is here. I'm the city planning director. And certainly I remember coming to the Ville a long time ago and seeing a tree growing out of the top of Homer G. Phillips. And so, boy, I'm glad we've been able to make transformations. Very proud of this process. And the tricks that I've heard to make it implemented is, let's remember to stay together so we can help find pieces to fund and help implementation. One of the things, what the Alderwoman was saying about, is very important about the political process for budget allocation and such. But one of the things in the development process that you now have a very strong leg up with the adoption of this plan, one of the typical things the city does to help with physical improvements and new development is redevelopment plans. And they're generally done through the LCRA, part of SLDC. But the trick is, not the trick, the requirement is every one of those plans generated with some need to make a physical improvement, new building, help with a business, those types of things, is originated, but it has to come to Jonathan and his team and the Planning Commission to be found that that action is in compliance with the neighborhood plan. And that's a key thing. It's not, doesn't get to be willy-nilly. It has to be done in compliance with the neighborhood plan. And that's part of the system. And it's now a key component that you have, or certainly will, have an adopted neighborhood plan that imposes those requirements on that toolbox.
I'll try to be quick. I've been involved in plans at this scale for 30 years, been through a lot of them, different roles. From what I can tell, and I've looked at this one closely, I think it's a good plan. It's a good roadmap. Plans are great at articulating goals and how to achieve them. In and of themselves, they don't do anything. But they're a great framework for kind of building advocacy and collaboration and aligning resources to achieve things. So one of my favorite quotes is, "You don't have to move to live in a better neighborhood." Nothing I can tell you guys about tenacity or patience that you don't already know. Parts of this will probably be fairly straightforward. Parts of them are going to be frustrating and take time. I definitely echo what Alderwoman Saunier said about, pester your elected officials, talk to your alder person constantly, bring them in. All that said, I do have a question. I've heard reference to an implementation committee. I'd like to have some understanding of that, what that looks like. I would hope that it's durable. Yes, you need to include your alders all the way through implementation, but I think an implementation committee needs to be more durable than, it needs to outlast election cycles. Alders come and go. Institutions tend to be here for 98 years or more. So I'd like to know that that implementation committee has some durable organization and muscle behind it. And to answer a couple of previous concerns about people that weren't involved in the process, yes, any plan has flexibility. Goals probably have enough common ground and for everyone to align behind, at least broadly. Implementation committees, particularly if they do include those who weren't maybe included in the process, can certainly account at it and improve the net results. If the people who wanted maybe to have been involved and weren't are involved at that level. So if staff or the consultant could touch on the structure of the implementation committee, what that looks like, and how that would move forward.
Thank you. The implementation committee, so the city today does not have an official, let's call it an implementation committee. Actually, I would say the one that they do outside of the board bill to recognize neighborhood organizations, separate from that, the Chapter 99 Blight and Redevelopment Plan that happened in Project Connect area, which actually stated that the city, in making decisions of incentives over $1 million, had to go to this committee, and it spelled out that committee. Otherwise, in the city, there's really nothing formalized. And the We Collab committee, implementation committee, we adopted the plan here at the Planning Commission about 3 years ago. Now has been meeting actually weekly for their committee, and there's other people who can speak more on that. But what we seek to have is people who have been involved in the process, or people who would like to get more involved with the process in development. So this would be the neighborhood planning committee that formally is today. There's a number of neighborhood organizations that either represented block units as well who want to have more say in their development. So currently, how we've been, yes, a little bit of a test. CDA and SLDC in this process held some, and LRA had some proposed projects that otherwise wouldn't have gotten as much public or even neighborhood scrutiny as if it didn't come to this committee. So they met a few times in this process, about 3, then continued to actually attend the neighborhood planning committees throughout, and also giving small updates about CDA. So we thought that was helpful, but right now there's a need from a number of people in the city to communicate with neighborhood consistently and regularly, but there's also need on the neighborhoods end to have this formalized committee. So right now, we are still looking into what exactly, I mean, the plan does spell out more about how that committee should be, but how that, there's the official, how the city recognizes that, or there's just how the neighborhood comes together under it. So we have more about how the neighborhood can come together, and different needs about who definitely should be there. There's definitely people that you heard tonight that definitely should be involved, but there's also what's a little bit in the working progress for not only this neighborhood, but Plan Area 2, Plan Area 3 is the city's formal, how do they recognize these different committees, what we're still working on too.
Good evening again, y'all. Sunny Hutton, Community Engagement Consultant on the project and also Kingsway East resident. What's amazing, I'm thinking back to what Tyrone had said about he joined Kingsville, which is Kingsway East mixed with the Villes. Yeah. So he joined because he was a part of a group that wanted to take action, and they were about it, and they did it, and they showed it. It just wasn't in their words. So 3 months ago, a committee was actually formed on Kingsville specifically for planning. So they're going to be stewards. They're going to be resident stewards that are already doing the work. And Kingsville is a very welcoming group as well. So they're going to be sticking to that plan, looking at it. They'll be pulling in city officials for each of those priority projects. Everything from making sure the sidewalks on this part of the neighborhood are fixed, to everything from, okay, can we talk to this certain developer and, pitch our neighborhood to them. So it got started 3 months ago, and then we will officially launch in January of 2026. Yeah, so. Yeah, we're excited about the committee. Yeah, but we already doing the work.
So we need to find ways to empower, because even their neighborhood planning meetings, a lot of neighborhood associations or organizations throughout the city do have, regularly speaking, their older person, their different city departments and third parties there. But a lot of times there's not a formalized structure. So this is where we are now dipping our feet into that pool to say, there's a board bill on the table that that recognizes community organizations. So there is that attempt, but there's other means that we still need to look at to see. And I'm not saying that everyone's happy on that end one, but that's one of the first shots that someone in the city has had to recognize like some type of group. But this plan has it. The We Collab plan also talked about implementation. So there's more to talk about as to what kind of structure really works for the citizens of St. Louis, but also departments to really go to be, we can always go to them counting. So we need to build that relationship too.
Yeah, community needs its own squeaky wheel, long lasting.
I'll try to be brief. First, thanks staff, consultants, and most importantly, the community, not just here, but everybody that's been involved with this. That's kind of my first topic. I've seen kind of plans for either counties or cities that have had less engagement than this, so I was really happy to see those stats. And seeing that you guys have reached out so much and stayed involved, and stayed committed to hearing every voice, or at least trying to. I did hear some other testimony that some people are missed, and that's unfortunate. But there are still ways to stay involved, and I hope that everybody that was missed on the first try or the second try, the 27th try, can still get involved. There's still opportunity there. This is your community. This is our community. This is our city. So please don't feel slighted. Get involved, please. Like, there's more stuff that's coming down. There will continue to be stuff. So I just wanted to say that. A little bit about me. I grew up on Lexington Taylor and then Greer and Cora, Greaterville. My mom was born at Homer G, so I have that connection here. Just like Jake, without this neighborhood, I wouldn't be here. There's no way. So I just wanted to, the people on this commission, the people that are involved, we all have something that ties us to this neighborhood. Kind of put my civil hat on for a little bit. Something that kind of Don hit on a little bit and that we've kind of danced around a little bit is this plan and how it affects the future. From my standpoint as a civil, I work with developers. This plan gives you the teeth, to say, hey, we don't want that here. We want this here. We want our streets to look like this. We want connected sidewalks. All those things are things that I look at when a developer comes up and says, hey, I want to do this. And I'm like, I don't know, man, that neighborhood just told us they don't want that. Or they want you to do X, Y, Z. They want you to put artwork up. They want you to have great wayfinding, whatever. So from my standpoint, I love these plans because it gives me something to go back to the developer and say, no, that's not what they want. Because, I personally can't stand up, but if you guys enable us to do that, this is everywhere, including this commission. Because when a plan comes through and we have, I don't know, conditional use permit or whatever it is, we use that plan. It's a piece of our kind of guidelines, our guardrails to help protect you. So I said I was going to stay brief. That's my piece. I think everybody's in support of this. One last thing. I do have a question, clarification. This is a living document. Can we make updates to this as we go? So just something else to think about, stay involved. If there's something that's really like, they missed the boat on that, no offense. But we can, amend this or we can make revisions. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. There was a lot today in this presentation. And I have a connection, a pretty deep connection here to the Ville. Both my parents were Sumnerites. I grew up in the Ville. I've lived in this neighborhood for 62 years in Kingsway East. And one of the things, though, I see, we're lucky in a way that we're the first plan in this effort that the city did. The other bad side of that, and not bad, but the opportunity is the city's going to get better at this. And some of the things that we heard were complaints. We're going to get better, and we're going to do better. Some of the connections that I think Jonathan mentioned, and one of them is on financing that Jake was talking about. The financing similarities in all the planning groups in North City, the financial hurdles are the same. The thing we lack is developers wanting to come in that have assets and that are bankable. They're not looking to come in unless we sweeten the pot and have a defined path. And I think staff, we need to kind of look at our economic development strategy, that we kind of define that path a little more clearly, because it's the same in Fountain Park, Fairground, O'Fallon. Well, some of the specifics are different, but the economic challenges are very similar. So I just think we could probably learn more on that and how we stack those resources. Jonathan mentioned NS. There's also bankable loans the city could do, low interest loans. How do we fill those gaps? And let's articulate that specifically and give developers some kind of a path, because that's who we're trying to attract. We're not going to do this, as Jonathan pointed out, with city money. CDA doesn't have the money. We just can't do it that way. We've got to attract bank loans of that $38 million in that? No, it was $8 million that we needed on that example. We're not going to get that money from CDA. They don't have it, and that'd be the whole city grant for like 3 years. So we really need to find a way that we can lay that out and attract developers across the city. But overall, I think the plan is great. I do think, as Stan said, we need to update, modify, continue to monitor. And the final thing is some of the behaviors that we have in the city right now, which all the commissioners know, I say this all the time, that it's about how we enforce what we have. We don't have a lot, but we need to be more judicious in what we have. So thank you guys. I think it's a great job.
Thank you all for your work. I don't have anything more to add. I'm really interested in the implementation dollars. To Sterling's point, to everybody's point on the commission. Thanks for the engagement. I was gonna say hi to Representative Kimberly Ann Collins. I don't know if she went anywhere, but I know she's a huge advocate for this community as well. So thank you all for your work. Looking forward to supporting the plan tonight, and good luck.
I just wanted to add, being that State Representative Kimberly Ann Collins is present, that I think when we're talking about funding, especially post-tornado, we should not limit ourselves to just city dollars. I think there are absolutely some opportunities at the state level, and Representative Kimberly Ann Collins does sit on the budget committee at the state level. So I just want to make sure that we just remember it's not just on the city, and I do think that opportunity, especially post-tornado, we should explore that avenue for some funding opportunities for the implementation of these plans.
It is hard to find anything to add to all the great comments that have been made so far. And I wasn't even born in St. Louis. So I wasn't even born in Missouri. So I did not graduate from a high school in St. Louis. So it's really hard to talk about St. Louis. But the thing that I have to say I love about St. Louis is the love of the residents of their neighborhoods. You know, I live in the city because I love the city. It is inspiring to see people's passion for the neighborhoods where they live. You know, I know about the Ville. Everyone should. And to be able to bring that history to life is so important, and it's just really inspiring to see the work you've done to create this plan. The collaboration between the residents and the professionals has been really great, and I really look forward to seeing it implemented. And on that, I need a motion. Do you have recommended language, please?
Thank you, Chair. The recommended motion is that the Planning Commission adopts the neighborhood plan for the Ville, the Greater Ville, and Kingsway East neighborhoods as a neighborhood plan, subject to correction of a few minor errors, and as a supplement to the city's comprehensive plan. Thank you.
All right. Motion by Alderwoman Saunier, second by Commissioner Fowler. Call for vote. Aye. Congratulations. Pass it down to Don for the Executive Director's report.
Final report. I wanted to just to thank everybody again, but this is a different subject. I'm passing out a little information I'd like the staff to consider for our next meeting regarding gas stations and our zoning code. And I think we're having an opportunity as we move forward in our zoning process to talk a little bit about gas stations and their impact on the quality of life in the city of St. Louis, and maybe even break out something special on that. So Miriam, there might be the copies down there, but I wanted to talk about that. Kansas City, I attended the Missouri Planning Conference, and Kansas City had a very good strategy for working with their police department, their zoning and health and building officials on dealing with issues they were having with gas stations, and also set up design criteria for the stations as well. And I think that's something, they don't have all the problems solved. I don't think we will either, but I think it'll give it's a tool that we could use as we go forward in our zoning process to kind of give more direction to our code officials.
an important theme in a lot of the even early discussions with like diagnosing the problems with our zoning system. I think there are policy shortcomings relating to things like gas stations, convenience stores, and other uses that, if not properly located or properly managed, can go sideways and become quality of life issues. So there's a policy side of that, but also just the lack of enforcement tools and enforcement capacity at the city are an enormous issue that is raised again and again. So that's just to share that I think in that process we're going to be looking deeply at all of the enforcement tools we can build into the new code. There are some that are missing, like there are no penalties, for example, currently at all. There are on the building kind of property maintenance side, but not with zoning violations. There aren't enough revocation tools, all sorts of things like this. But I think we're also trying to flag and start a conversation about there's a potential for the city to invest in enforcement capacity. The city used to have zoning inspectors, does not currently, things like that. So I just really appreciate this conversation at this point that you, Commissioner Miller, has very consistently raised. And I know that's of concern to this neighborhood too. So just sharing that.
That is the end of our business for this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.